get started, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains information session for this upcoming summer 2025. Before we start, I just wanted to briefly introduce everyone that will be joining us today. We have Aadi Mullan, who is a summer 2024 participant. He's going to be sharing about his experience in the program and some of the things that he loved most. We have on the Columbia side, Josh DeVincenzo from the National Center for Disaster Preparedness, who's going to be sharing about some of the lessons that he teaches in the Green Mountains program. And Josh has been with us from the inception of the program back in 2021. So we're excited to have Josh back. Sylvie Littledale from Putney Student Travel is also joining us. At Putney, Sylvie collaborates with us to run the Green Mountains program, and she is going to share about the application process and next steps that you want to take if you'd like to join us this summer. And Sarah Wagner is a graduate student from the MA Climate and Society program, and she will be monitoring our Q&A. So a little agenda for us. We're going to provide some brief introductions to the organizations behind the Green Mountains program. That's the Columbia Climate School and Putney Student Travel. We're going to provide an in-depth overview of the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains program. We're going to detail the student experience, key program themes, teaching approaches, the insights into the Columbia experts leading the program, and an overview of some of the lessons that we're going to be covering during this experience. We're also going to provide a glimpse into a day in the life of a Green Mountain student. So we're going to highlight some of these experiences, including team building and the experiential learning activities, the debates and simulations that we host that really deepen the understanding of climate challenges and solutions, some of the hands-on fieldwork and data collection and analysis that students will be engaged in. We also take excursions that showcase the practitioners that are in our network that are applying climate solutions into their careers. We will discuss some project-based learning approaches to drive impact and foster innovation. And finally, some of the fun activities that we do to explore Vermont and just the natural beauty of this region in the summer. We're going to conclude by talking about program eligibility and the application process and next steps that you can take to join us. We will definitely leave time at the end for questions. So at any point during this info session, if a question pops in your head, feel free to put it in the Q&A. Sarah's going to be monitoring it, and we'll be sure to save time to answer your questions at the end. All right. So the Columbia Climate School is Columbia University's School of Interdisciplinary Climate Research. It was announced in July 2020, and the Climate School is the first new school established at the university in over 25 years. The school's mission is to develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions and educate future leaders for just and prosperous societies on a healthy planet. Columbia University is a global leader in climate and sustainability education and has a long-standing history of earth and environmental science education and research. So actually, our story begins 70 years ago with the founding of Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, or LDEO. This campus is located 20 miles north of New York City on 189 acres overlooking the Hudson River. It's recognized as the #1 scientific institution in the U.S. dedicated to earth and environmental sciences. LDEO has been and continues to be at the forefront of groundbreaking climate research. The Columbia University and Lamont scientists have played pivotal roles in advancing our understanding of climate change. And in fact, the term global warming was coined in 1972 by Dr. Wallace Broecker, a renowned Lamont scientist and Columbia University professor of geology. Marie Thorpe was a pioneering geologist and cartographer at LDEO, and she really revolutionized plate tectonics by co-discovering the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and creating the first detailed maps of the ocean floor, which revealed the ridge's rift valley as evidence of seafloor spreading. Lamont's research contributions also include developing the first model to accurately predict extreme weather patterns of El Nino events, and these achievements are just a glimpse of the transformative discoveries that have emerged from Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory that are being used to influence the climate school's work today. The Earth Institute was established in 1996, and it's Columbia University's largest research institution, bringing over 750 environmental scientists, policy analysts, engineers, and other experts to the forefront of solving our planet's most challenging issues, climate change. As a driving force behind many of the programs that are now a part of the Climate School, the Earth Institute was created to address critical challenges at the intersection of sustainability, climate, natural hazards, and the relationship between human society and the environment. For nearly 3 decades, it's championed evidence-based, research-driven solutions to tackle these complex issues and advance global sustainability. The Climate School is committed to offering interdisciplinary educational opportunities for graduate, undergraduate, and pre-college students, as we recognize that you all are the next generation of change makers and essential stakeholders to address the climate crisis. So, why are young people so critical? Well, climate is a long-term problem. We are experiencing challenges now, but the generations in the future are going to be the most affected. So young people need to be a part of the solution in developing new climate technologies, ways to combat climate injustices, and new adaptation approaches to climate impacts. And you might ask, how? How do we do this? Well, young people need to be equipped with the knowledge, skills, and tools to drive these solutions forward. And it's not that we think everyone needs to be a climate scientist. We actually need a diversity of skills, passions, and careers, with climate science serving as the underpinning of this work. Our pre-college program shows how Earth processes, climate science, and sustainability can be integrated into any career path that you choose. Whether you do want to become a climate scientist, or maybe a lawyer, politician, artist, doctor, or work in any other field, climate will impact your work, but you can also contribute in that career to be a part of the solution. A key focus of our pre-college programs is empowering young people to become community leaders. Since meaningful climate action begins at the local level, we aim to equip future climate activists with the tools to mobilize their communities and drive lasting change. And through our partnership with Putney Student Travel, we offer exceptional summer experiences that immerse students in hands-on, in-the-field learning led by Columbia Climate School experts. These programs provide high schoolers with exclusive access to advanced climate content that's rarely available at the high school level. I'm now going to pass it over to Sylvie to share a little bit more about Putney Student Travel's history, mission, and goals.
Thanks, Laurel. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As Laurel said, my name is Sylvie, and I'm the program director for the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains program here on the Putney side. Just a little bit about Putney Student Travel and our mission and who we are. We are an organization that runs educational travel programs for high school and middle school students all over the world. Our mission is to provide opportunities for students to learn, grow, collaborate, and embrace the new, all while keeping them safe. Our goal is to turn summer vacation into an educational opportunity and really encourage our students to deeply connect with the world around them through immersion and experiential learning opportunities. We run a number of small group travel programs of around 16 students and 2 leaders, in addition to a series of larger campus-based programs like this one across 6 continents. We establish and maintain long-standing relationships with contacts and communities across the globe, and this is what makes these experiences happen. Our students are able to step into these decade-long relationships and feel as though they have family wherever they go in the world. We're based here in Putney, Vermont, in southern Vermont. We work out of a restored cow barn. That's where these beams are coming from. We have a unique collection of 30 colleagues and program directors here in what we call the barn, the office here. Among our program directors, we have former Peace Corps volunteers, former teachers, licensed ship captains, anthropologists, and people from many other backgrounds, each bringing knowledge, expertise, experience in various languages to the programs that we develop here. When you call to learn about a program, you're speaking directly with one of us, the person who curates that program and who is in touch with local contacts on a daily basis. During the summer, we're also on call and available 24/7 while our programs are out in the field, and we're here and ready to support with anything that comes up on the ground if we're not leading programs ourselves. You can head to the next slide. So this is our 74th summer running educational travel programs as Putney Student Travel. It's a family-run organization, and we're actually in our 3rd generation of family leadership. Right now, Putney Student Travel was founded in 1951 by a couple, George and Kitty Shumlin. They were both teachers, and they were deeply concerned about a world where they were seeing more division than ever. In 1951, George and Kitty chose to do something about this by taking a group of US-based high school students to Europe on a steamship. In that post-war era, Putney programs were created to help students get out of their comfort zone and to create unifying face-to-face interactions across lines of difference as a way to find a common ground. Our mission has not changed much and is, as we feel, more important than ever right now. That's why we're so excited for the opportunity to collaborate with the Columbia Climate School to elevate young and passionate voices and to promote dialogue and participation around solutions to the climate crisis. I'll pass it over to you, Laurel, to talk a little bit more about the program itself.
Thanks. All right, so the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains, this is our pre-college summer program at the Columbia Climate School. It's a campus-based program in Vermont at Vermont State University's picturesque 165-acre campus. Students from the Green Mountains program will be joining a cohort of like-minded students from across the country and the world, which is why I was asking where everyone was tuning in from today, so they can learn from each other and collaborate to gain an understanding of the multifaceted aspects of climate change, learn about the individual roles in climate action, and engage in meaningful conversations that's about taking action in your own communities. You might be asking, why are we hosting a program in Vermont if the climate school is based in New York City? Well, Vermont is the perfect location to learn about climate solutions, as Vermont has been a leader in the US for green energy. They've rapidly increased renewable energy like wind and solar and increased energy efficiency, all while building jobs and lowering electrical rates, which is wonderful. Vermont is really showing the country how one state can move the needle in the right direction in addressing climate change while building a more sustainable economy for its people. Therefore, Vermont State University is the perfect classroom or laboratory for us to learn and study climate science, technology, and policy that can be applied to real life. In addition, Putney Student Travel is extremely well connected in their home state of Vermont, and they can connect the students of the Green Mountains program with a diverse network of sustainability practitioners to learn about on-the-ground solutions. The students will experience all that Vermont has to offer by exploring the local area and immersing themselves in the Green Mountains. This year, we're going to be hosting the program from June 29th through July 11th. So it's a 13-day, 12-night program. The fee is $6,890. This is an all-inclusive fee. It covers your accommodation, all the meals, program activities, field excursions, and weekend trips, including your transportation during the program. This is a pre-college program really designed for high school students grades 9 through 12. We do consider motivated rising 9th graders or current 8th grade students. So to get a sense of the Green Mountains program, I wanted to share a short mini documentary that was created this summer that will really show you what it's like to be a student in this program.
I'm very passionate about the water crisis, especially in Arizona right now and Mexico, because parts of Mexico I've recently had to state that they're literally out of water in the city. And then to actually physically be here and talk with people who are actually trying to come up with solutions and working in the fields, it's really cool. And to see the effects of seeing how clear it is here.
Each year we have 60 to 80 students that join our program, and we break them into smaller learning cohorts so they have an ability to work in small groups on activities and also have smaller group or one-on-one discussions with experts. One of the incredible things about this program is that we have students that come from all over the United States and the world. So this year we have students representing 6 different countries, and this program lasts for 2 weeks in Vermont. And that just really is a wonderful opportunity for students to conduct field work and to learn from the environment directly. We find that being outdoors is the best laboratory, and Vermont is the perfect place for that.
Oh my god, it's cool, right?
I wanted to participate in the climate science program because Our family, we do have discussions about climate change a lot, and I wanted to do it because, when you look around outside and you hear about other tribes that we're so displaced now, and all of our homelands, they're gone, unless it's a reserve. And I really wanted to come here so I could learn more because it's for youth, what we as a people can do, and it's something that I can introduce to my family when I get home.
Across the 2 weeks, students learn from 6 different Columbia Climate School experts on a variety of climate topics. Everything from the science of climate change to thinking about how to build resilience in communities, how to communicate about climate change, policy, economics, and ultimately solutions. We also want to encourage students to learn how to debate with each other, how to do collaborative activities. And a lot of high school students don't have opportunities to engage in field work, so we have a lot of opportunities for them to go out into the field, collect samples, analyze these samples, so then they're kind of building their own scientific background and skill sets that will prepare them for college as well. We also visit Lake George to learn from the Darren Freshwater Institute, and they're doing research locally in Lake George, but also globally around climate.
Leisure has just always been a big part of my life, I'm named Precious Jade. It's what Chalchiwiti means. All my family, we all are tied to nature and what life is. But I think it's really cool that they are actively trying to come up with solutions and stuff. I think that's a really important part of actually seeing something done. It gives me hope and gives me inspiration.
So we are actually joined today by one of the alumnus of the summer 2024 program. We have Aadi here. So I would love to hear from you about your experience and share a little bit about some of your favorite moments of the program. But first, maybe you can introduce yourself, your name, grade school, and where you are tuning in from today.
Yeah, sure. So, hi guys, my name is Aadi. I'm a current 10th grader from New York City, where I'm from right now, and I go to a school called Horseman.
Awesome. So when you first, I was just kind of curious how you first heard about the program and what inspired you to apply.
Yeah, so I'm really passionate in environmental and climate studies, and I just wanted to, get a sense of what the field is like and expand my knowledge in the field. And I did some research for some programs, and I found the Columbia Climate School program in the Green Mountains, and for me, it was a no-brainer to choose this program, and I'd say it definitely paid off. So,
That's great. That's great that you did some of this research on your own. You clearly were, very driven and interested in this topic. And so you had this background foundation. But then when you came on the program, you hear from 6 different Columbia experts in addition to practitioners in the field. So I'm curious, what were some of your favorite things that you learned or skills that you gained while on the program?
yeah. So, like you talked about, we were joined by 6 professors from Barnard, Columbia, and also a few PhD candidates. So, what I really loved was that all of them were interested and taught us about a specific field. So, one professor taught us about how to talk to people about climate change and how to, communicate your point. Laurel actually taught us about the climate crisis in different parts of the world. So for me, that I guess that broadness of the knowledge and then digging deeper on it was really important in understanding the field and also important in learning how to communicate with others and teach others about the field.
That's awesome. And the professor that taught you about climate communication and conversation is Josh DeVincenzo, who's here with us today. So we'll get to hear
Yeah.
a little bit later from Josh about some of the lessons that he teaches on the program. That's great. And so, it is a pre-college program. We want you to get experience being on a college campus, being in lecture, but we incorporate a lot of different learning and educational approaches. So it's not just lectures. We do a lot of activities. We did a huge debate, field activities, excursions. What were some of your favorite educational activities or lessons that you did on the program?
Yeah. So the excursions for me were really fun. So I'd say my favorite was probably the Lake George one. Um, so not only Lake George, but I think like Laura was talking about, the importance of doing the program in Vermont is that it's so close to so many natural beauties. And on the Castleton campus, actually, there's a lot of streams, there's a lot of walkways, so you can learn just right on the campus. So those activities were really fun. I remember we picked out animals from a stream and then we examined them and we took notes and observations on them. So that was really fun. And then we also did a UN event where every student was assigned a different country and we all, argued, we debated about, and we basically simulated what the UN floor would be like for Climate Week. So
Yeah. And you brought up a great point, that in Castleton, Vermont, we have this incredible access, like right in our own backyard, to be able to collect and analyze these samples that can inform us about the current conditions of the ecosystem, which if you're tracking impacts from climate, you have to do a long-term study and look at the current existing conditions and track that change over time. So just something that we have access to in Vermont that would be maybe a little trickier if we did the program in New York City. Not to say impossible, but it is really nice that we have this nearby creek and lake and forest and lots of areas to explore. That's awesome. And so, Aadi, one of the primary components of this program is for you all to feel empowered to create a climate action project so you can bring back positive change to your community. So the work doesn't end after the 2 weeks are over, that it continues long after. Could you share a little bit about what your climate action project was on and maybe the progress that you've made since the program has been over?
sure. So my climate action project was, so my building in New York City is, I guess, decently old, so it doesn't really incorporate sustainable practices in the building. For example, we don't have solar panels, we don't really compost. So my climate action project was to install solar panels, specifically for ACs in the building because of climate change and global warming. Air conditioning usage over the past few years has skyrocketed. So basically, my project was kind of a pitch to my building to install solar panels. So a little bit about where it is. So I didn't exactly go with that project, but that the climate action project actually inspired me to create new climate action projects and use the knowledge that I learned from that in doing different stuff. So right now, what I'm doing is with my school. So right now, me and a bunch of other students are looking at the school's energy usage in electricity, and we're working on making that more sustainable. So although the project that I did in the Green Mountains didn't exactly pan out, it definitely led me to and inspired me to create new projects. And the skills I learned from doing that project are why I'm able to, do this project right now. So
That's awesome. And that's definitely one of the goals that we want students to take away from is, this program could have inspired you in one direction, but maybe you want to pivot. Maybe you find that in your school community, you have other classmates that feel passionately about this topic, and the larger you can make your voice by onboarding more people, the more of an impact you can have. So I think that's really amazing. And I'm excited to see how this project goes with your school.
yeah.
So Aadi, what are your future plans? Are you do you have some timeline benchmarks for this project with your school? Are you hoping to carry this work into college? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, for me, my main interest in environmental sciences and climate studies are alternative energies and also environmental literacy. So along with this project with the school's energy usage, I'm also working on, doing more stuff during assemblies. Um, my school is really big on sustainability for one, so we have what's called Green Week, where the school promotes, sustainable practices. And so I'm looking to lead, workshops during that on environmental literacy because, I live in a city, for example, and, um, obviously climate change, in the city, you don't really experience it as much as you would in, per se, Vermont. So, people in the city don't really know, I guess, the basics of climate change. Like, they hear in the news, oh, climate foot or carbon footprint, greenhouse gases, but what does that actually mean? So just, teaching people about that because in the next, 20 or so years, this is going to be, one of the most pressing topics, in the world. So,
Absolutely. And I think that translation of the information that you learned on the program to your friends, your family, your broader network is so critical because we need everyone to take action, not just a few individuals. One of the things we talked about in the program is that there is no one climate hero, that we really need collective action to move the needle forward. And so it really all starts with education. So I think that's amazing. And thank you for continuing the work into your school life and your home life as well.
yeah, definitely.
Is there anything else you want to share?
All I want to say to you guys is just, this is a great program. And if you're really interested in climate studies and you're really interested in making a change, I would highly recommend doing this program. So,
Thanks, Aadi. And we have a lot of fun as well. So if you have any
yes, definitely.
questions, if you have any questions for Aadi, he's gonna stick around so you can pop them in the Q&A, and then we'll have a chance to answer them towards the end.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So in the Green Mountains program, there is a strong emphasis on academics. So each summer, the program content varies based on the feedback that we receive from past participants. This summer, the themes included the science of climate change, which includes learning about the greenhouse effect. We introduce the physics of Earth's temperature, so we do get a little bit of math and physics a part of this lesson. Natural variability versus anthropogenic or human-caused change, and climate projections and models. We have a modeler that joins that teaches about how models work, what data is inputted, and how we can use this to really better understand what might happen in the future. We talk about climate impacts, global processes such as sea level rise, glacial melt, average global temperature increase versus the local impacts of climate change, which really vary geographically. They can impact local ecosystems, economies, and communities. As Aadi mentioned, this is the lesson that I teach. Climate preparedness and resilience. So we'll be learning about preparedness and risk, recovery and planning, and mitigation and adaptation strategies. We learn about international climate policies and negotiations, which include the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, UN climate change negotiations, and global governance and international law. We have an expert that will teach on decarbonization pathways in the energy transition. A part of this includes monitoring and measuring our progress, and learning about these different transition strategies to shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. We focus on climate justice. This is critically important because we know that there are disproportionate impacts to climate change. There is also an equity and inclusivity focus that we need to prioritize when it comes to climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies. Everyone needs to have a seat at the table to really push those solutions forward. Sustainability and circular economy. So we'll talk about consumerism and throwaway culture, building a value chain, new economic models and circular systems, and achieving sustainable business practices. Climate change communication and conversation, as Aadi mentioned, this one was one of the topics that he enjoyed the most. So we'll talk about effective messaging to convey climate information and techniques to foster an open dialogue on climate issues. We'll also do a lot of, we'll talk about applied solutions and action. So we'll learn from other sustainability practitioners about the implementation of sustainable practices in their own career fields and translating these concepts that we learn about in the classroom into practical real-world applications. we'll do some collective action around the students preparing their climate action projects. So this will be focused on local community initiatives, how to include a variety of stakeholders, and the role of young people in climate action. So we have 6 Columbia Climate School experts that lead these lessons and activities in the Green Mountains program. The experts are leaders in a variety of sectors, including climate science, social science, sustainability, finance, and policy. And all of our experts are committed to equipping students with the tools they need to take local action for global climate impacts. So our first expert is Josh, and Josh is here today, so I'll give him the chance to introduce himself and his background.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. And as Laurel mentioned, I've been with the program for a few years, so always excited to return. And thanks for welcoming and inviting me back. So just a little bit about my background and some of the lessons that I teach at in Vermont each summer. So I work as the Assistant Director of Education and Training at the National Center for Disaster Preparedness, which is housed here at Columbia's Climate School. I'm also an adjunct assistant professor at the Climate School, where I teach in our master's program for climate and society. And one thing at each summer, I kind of at the outset share with students is that I run our sessions very much like our graduate students and very much like our graduate student classes, because I think as long as you have the interest and the energy and willing to kind of engage with the discourse on these topics, everyone's ready, and the group of Vermont always surpasses anything that I expect for the types of discussions we have, the types of solutions that are proposed. So it keeps me very energized and excited to come back each year. So some of the sessions that I teach are primarily on the disaster side. As I mentioned, I work for the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. So we're often in the kind of effects of climates, the impact of climate. So the really interesting part of the Putney program is, and it always kind of shocks me how much information is shared in that amount of time, is that you really get to grasp an understanding and really tackle the challenges of both the causes of climate change as well as the effects. So when you hear from some of my really brilliant colleagues on some of the climate science fundamentals early on in the program, you're really getting a good understanding of the cause. How do we look at different ways at adaptation, mitigation type things? And the other thing that we do on the disaster side to complement the causes of climate is really focus on the social impact of the effects. So these come in the forms of the droughts, the fires, the earthquakes, the hurricanes, the storms. And what we do is really work with students to think about your local community and think about what's at stake. What are these impacts that we can look at things like social justice. We can look at things like our built environment. How do we build our cities, our towns, the way we communicate about our risks of different disaster types, really with the aim and the goal of protecting people. That's essentially the mission and the goal of disaster preparedness. And one of the things that we do with each of these sessions is really bring students to the real world, the present moment of what we're working on out in the field, so that you get a glimpse of what a different career pathways, different intersections that are extremely important when we talk about the effects of climate change. All of this is really in the sentiment of trying to empower individuals in their communities to go back to your communities and share this type of information, to, of course, look at the safety of everybody and think about just how do we better engage in these conversations of what could happen with these impacts of climate change. One of the things that I think is the most exciting part of the program and some of the sessions that we teach on is our disaster tabletop exercise. So one thing that we do is we do a simulation of a disaster happening on Vermont's campus, and what are all the different action items that we would need to accomplish to make sure that everybody's safe, to make sure that we're better equipped for future disasters that could happen at let's say a campus in Vermont. But we do that so that, one, it's very high activity, high engagement, but then two, it's we can debrief those lessons learned. What did we miss in that disaster response and that disaster recovery? The other thing that I would want to mention about this program that's really special is that there is a community atmosphere to it, where we're getting students from all around the world that have either noticed some of the different hazards, the risks of climate, or experienced disasters. And it's such a dynamic community where we can share and talk about those experiences, that we can take a time to notice the different impacts that are becoming relevant for us of climate. And really it puts students in a position where they're not really alone when they're thinking about these things, and that's really kind of a great benefit that we can have those discussions at both an academic, personal, and professional level around these impacts that we're noticing. We do try to keep it very solutions based. We want to always highlight throughout the lessons the great work that's happening around the world on preparing these communities for disasters, but then equip students to be thinking about what projects can we do to even enhance further our capacity for some of these effects. So we definitely take a deep dive in there, but we take it at a pace that's comfortable for everybody. But as I mentioned, every year I'm kind of shocked and blown away by the solutions that are proposed, and I can't wait for next summer to kind of see where we are as a group, as a community that we'll build. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Josh. That's amazing. If anyone has questions about the session that Josh shared, there's also we're going to talk a little bit more about it in a few slides. Josh also teaches on climate conversation and communication, so feel free to populate those questions in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. Awesome. Our next expert is Laurel DeSera. Laurel is a doctoral student in climate science at Columbia University. She researches how mosquito-borne diseases are impacted by climate. So she focuses on assessing and improving these sub-seasonal to seasonal forecasts and how these models can be used by decision makers to improve the livelihoods of their constituents. Laurel co-teaches the climate science primer that we'll talk about in just a moment, and she also teaches the science of climate change lesson. Miriam Nelson is also a doctoral student in the Earth and Environmental Sciences at Columbia University. She also has a joint appointment with NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. So Miriam is really interested in how severe hazards will change under warming and the vulnerability of people and ecosystems to these changes. So she uses large-scale climate data sets and model simulations to investigate regional climate and ecosystem dynamics related to precipitation and drought. Miriam also in, I think a past life, was creating these online educational videos about climate change and environmental advocacy. So if that is of interest to you in terms of climate communication, you should certainly reach out to Miriam about that. She co-teaches the climate science primer with Laurel, and then she teaches the climate modeling and projections lesson. Martin Dietrich Brauch is a lead researcher at Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment. He leads economic and legal research, training, and advisory work with a focus on legal and policy frameworks and practices for sustainable investments to achieve climate mitigation and adaptation goals. So these goals include decarbonization and a just transition to net zero emissions energy systems and economies and other sustainable development goals. So Martin teaches sustainable development goals in the Paris Agreement, decarbonization pathways, monitoring and measuring progress, and global governance and international law. So Martin teaches a handful of lessons. He also joins us for the UN climate debate, because Martin actually, as a youth, went to the Conference of the Parties back when I think he was like 15 years old. So he has this experience, and he's able to guide us through that negotiation process. So it's really fun. Sandra Goldmark is an associate professor of practice in the Department of Theater at Barnard, the director of campus sustainability and action at Barnard, and the associate dean of interdisciplinary engagement at the Columbia Climate School. So Sandra wears many hats, but her background actually shapes her current career today, which is really cool. So Sandra, in theater, recognized that the production of sets and costumes for a play are quite wasteful, that at the end of the play, they're not recycled or reused, that they're often just thrown away. And so it was driving her crazy because there must be a better system than this, right? So it led Sandra to take a deep dive into circular systems and the circular economy. She actually then became the founder of Fix Up, which uses a multidisciplinary approach to focus on creating innovative solutions to the use and discard culture by helping people take care of what they have, reduce the waste from new manufacturing, and create local jobs. So she really started to take this deep dive into circularity. And now Sandra is an expert and teaches the Introduction to Circular Economy, from linear to circular, and connections to circularity in the Green Mountains program. And then myself, I actually think I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Laurel Zaima-Sheehy. I am the Assistant Director of K-12 and Continuing Education at the Columbia Climate School. So I have experience working with young people, working with teachers, professional learners, and the general public to really take a deep dive into some of the research and scholarship at the Columbia Climate School. So I'm helping make some of this research accessible around environmental science, sustainability, climate science impacts. So people outside of the degree lens can take some of this information and implement it into their own life. I teach the climate change in your community, climate activism, and empowering youth for change lessons. My background is in sustainability science and also marine science. So I lead a lot of the field activities that are giving students these tangible skills to go out into the field, sample and collect data and analyze that data. And a lot of that, just given the nature of Vermont, we get to do it in an aquatic sense. We also go out into the forest and collect some samples as well. So I lead students through these processes that are going to be things that they're probably going to do in college as well. So in addition to the academic rigor that we ensure in the program, we also want to make sure that students have fun and are given opportunities to learn in different modalities. So there are a variety of different activities and immersive experiences that students will engage in throughout the program. So this includes a speaker series that kind of simulates your traditional college lectures, but we also focus on team building and project-based learning opportunities, small group learning environments where students engage in debates and simulations that really deepen the understanding of climate challenges and solutions, excursions that showcase different practitioners and how they apply climate solutions in their career, hands-on fieldwork focused on data collection and analysis I just mentioned, a final climate action project where students develop a solution or a plan to address one climate challenge that their community faces. Students will then share these final projects at the end of the program to gain advice and feedback from Columbia experts as well as their peers, so they can take all of this information and really implement it once they go home. And finally, we have time to explore Vermont's stunning natural beauty that is at our fingertips throughout the summer. So we wanted to give you a sneak peek of some of the program content, lessons, and activities that you can expect as part of the Green Mountains program. The first is the climate science primer. So because there are no prerequisite courses for acceptance into the program, we start with this primer. So all students are starting with the foundational knowledge that they can build on throughout the program. So this is led by Laurel, DeSera, and Miriam Nelson. It focuses on the difference between weather and climate, the various types of climate classifications, how climate influences our society geographically, a primer on earth science and a review of the different spheres of the earth, and then the function of radiation and greenhouse gases. We actually play this really fun game that is simulating the role of the sun's radiation and then the role that greenhouse gases play and how too many greenhouse gases or the greenhouse gases that are produced through anthropogenic or human-caused activities can start to really warm the earth and serve as like a insulating blanket. So I'm going to show this video that gives you a sense of how the game is played. Come on, So it's a really fun game. Those students that were trying to run out of the circle are radiation from the sun. There is some radiation that gets bounced back. And so they are trying to escape from this circle around the sun, which is the frisbee, are the Earth's atmosphere and the greenhouse gases that are trying to tag them and trap them, which then would heat up the Earth. So it's a fun game. It's also a nice demonstration to better understand how this works. This is a lesson that's led by Josh. So, Josh, I know you explained it, but I don't know if you wanted to pop in and share a little bit more about this activity.
Sure, yeah, I'll do a kind of just a quick preview of this one. So this is really looking at the relationship between some of our social factors, our economic factors, as well as our government factors, and how they all play a hand in how prepared a community might be for disasters. So we're really thinking about that from all those different perspectives. But then it also shows different areas in which we can engage on themes of climate resilience. So we take this kind of buzzword, very broad word, and break it down into what it means at these different parts, and work from there.
Thanks, Sarah. So the next lesson is the decarbonization pathways, which is led by Martin Dietrich Brauch. He shares about the broad range of policy approaches and technologies that are needed for the rapid reduction of CO2, which include but aren't limited to energy efficiency measures, behavior changes, electrification, renewables, hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuel, bioenergy, and carbon capture use and storage. So this is just one of the many lessons that Martin teaches, but students really get a sense of the different strategies that can be employed, and that we have a lot of the tools that we need to reach net zero. It's really one of the challenges is how are we going to implement them? And moving on to climate negotiations, this is an all students on deck activity where we all come together to participate in this role-playing game that's really based on an international climate summit. So student groups, they role play the delegates representing different nations, negotiating blocks, and in some cases, interest groups like the fossil fuel interest group. And everyone debates, negotiates, and ultimately is working together to reach this global agreement to stay below 2 degrees C, or in an ideal scenario, 1.5 degrees C temperature rise from pre-industrial levels. So there is a lot of collaboration and negotiation that is involved, and it's a really great way for students to understand some of these challenges that happen at the international conferences, and also how to develop strategies to derive solutions forward. The series of 3 circular economy lessons taught by Sandra Goldmark present the core concepts of circular economy. So there's this group activity where students will work together to think strategically on how they might take a product or a system that's currently linear, that's currently creating waste, into one that is circular. So the students present these new circular systems back to the entire class for feedback. Sandra also provides feedback. And one of the things that they're going to find is with creativity and collaboration, there are oftentimes ways to make something that is challengingly linear into something that's circular. But it takes a bit of creativity. And we lead a variety of field-based activities that allow students to gain some research-based skills. In this particular activity, we had students conduct a biological survey of the fish and the different aquatic animals, as well as conduct water chemistry tests to assess the ecosystem health. Climate has local impacts, and the way to be able to assess these long-term impacts is by taking data across at least a 30-year time period. So students are collecting this information of the current conditions of the ecosystem and contributing to this long-term database on the health of this water body. Another field-based activity is surveying the macroinvertebrates, or the water bugs that live in a stream. These tiny water bugs, they actually can be an indicator of water quality or water health. So they have different tolerances of pollution. And so if we have a large diversity, particularly of these very sensitive species, then that can be an indicator of clean water in different streams. So this was one of the activities that Aadi was mentioning that he enjoyed. We also collect tree rings because tree rings can tell us a lot about past climate. So there's a group at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory that's dedicated to dendrochronology, or the study of past climate through trees. And students follow the same procedures that that lab uses to collect a tree core. We can see the different rings in the tree's life and actually analyze the past climate based on the growth cycles of each of these years. So we'll take this, but don't worry, no trees are hurt in this process. We make sure to only take 1 or 2 per tree so it can continue living that long life. But it does give us a lot of valuable data about climate. One of our first excursions is to the Darien Freshwater Institute at Lake George. This is an opportunity for students to learn about how climate is impacting the region that we're in, particularly the aquatic environment of Lake George. So students engage in a variety of activities, including a virtual reality session to learn about the importance of phytoplankton for our climate and ecosystem, a teaching lab about the various invasive and native plant species in the lake and how they're impacted by climate, and learning about remote operative vehicles, or ROVs, that are underwater, as well as in the air, like drones, that are used to assess the ecosystem conditions. We do a few other activities led in partnership with the Darien Freshwater Institute, but this is a great example of us learning from other practitioners in the area about how they're studying and understanding their local climate impacts. We also take an excursion to Burlington, Vermont, to hear from a panel of sector experts that are implementing sustainability into their work. One of the visits that we take is to Burlington Electric. So Burlington was one of the first cities in the US to source 100% of its electricity from renewable sources. Students will then hear about how Burlington Electric was able to achieve this goal and how they really incorporate community through an educational approach into their work and promoting a lot of energy savings, how it's a benefit for their local community, their pockets, and the environment. And we also have a lot of fun. We have a lot of exciting activities that allow students to explore Vermont, such as hiking, berry picking, petting alpaca, visiting a sustainable farm to learn about renewable or regenerative agriculture, enjoying days at the beach, and much more. Really, the adventures that we take in Vermont are endless. And each student, as I mentioned, creates this climate action project that addresses one climate challenge that their community faces. We've had a diversity of projects in the past because it really is based off of the students' current interests and passions and where they live and what the challenges their community faces. So we've had projects, everything from a student created this wetland restoration and education project, which actually is now implemented, and that educational piece is incorporated into schools. We have a student that created a prom dress swap to kind of create that linear system into something that's circular. Someone decarbonized a school's website. They looked at the creation of a bilingual educational book about climate. And as you heard, solar panels on buildings, whether it be your apartment building or schools building, is one that students have been able to work toward in the past. And at the end of the program, we celebrate with a keynote speech by Peter Shumlin, the 81st governor of Vermont, to really learn about how he was able to push a lot of renewable energy and a green agenda in politics during his time as governor. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Sylvie to share a little bit more about the application process and next steps that you may want to take.
Thanks, Laurel. And I'll also just mention that we're lucky here at Putney to have Peter Shumlin as one of our former co-directors here. He is the second generation of the now third generation of leadership of Putney Student Travel. So that's a cool connection that we're able to combine. So to apply for the Columbia in the Green Mountains program, we encourage you to visit our website and follow the link there to fill out an application. So students who are eligible for this program are completing 9th through 12th grade. And we also, as Laurel has said, consider motivated rising 9th graders for the program. Your application is considered through a selective application process with a rolling admission, where you're asked to submit a statement of interest. We want you to tell us why you're interested in joining the program and why you're passionate about these topics. And we also ask for 2 teacher references, so 2 people who can speak to your ability to contribute to the program and be an active participant in the group. You'll be asked to complete an agreement form, and to hold space on the program, you'll submit a $700 deposit, which is comprised of a $200 application fee and a $500 deposit on tuition. And we encourage you to please reach out to us if you have any questions about this process. The next slide will tell us about our scholarship opportunities. So we're really excited to offer full and partial need-based scholarships to attend the program for students residing inside the US. To apply for a scholarship, students should meet the same general admission eligibility requirements that I just mentioned. The application is actually on a separate page of our website for the scholarship specifically. You don't need to submit an application for the general application. It's a separate one for the scholarship. And we ask you to actually submit 2 responses. One is written, one has an option to be written or a video response. We ask for those same 2 teacher references, and we'll also ask for a series of financial information about your household to consider the need-based scholarship. So scholarship applications are not on a rolling admission. Scholarship applications are due on March 15th, 2025. Great. Thanks. I think at this point, we are ready to start taking some questions, right, Laurel?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for the past hour and change to learn about the Green Mountains program. We are happy to answer any questions that you may have. I also populated in the chat the application website link and the scholarship website link so you can learn a little bit more. We also have an FAQ page if there are no questions now that, something might arise in the future. We're always happy to answer your questions via email, so you feel free to contact us, or FAQ page is really helpful as well. But while we're here and while we have Josh and Aadi, if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask any of us, we'd be happy to answer them. Again, feel free to use the Q&A button since the chat is disabled. So while you may be thinking a little bit more about some questions that you may have, I can just share a little bit about the program highlights. So we have this is really the first climate school of its kind that was established in the United States. And we're really excited that we're at the forefront of thinking about climate solutions in a transdisciplinary way. We recognize that climate is really complex, and so there is no straight and narrow silver bullet solution to some of these challenges, that it really needs to be thought of across sectors. And so in learning that ourselves as researchers and practitioners, we want to share that information with students because it's really important, no matter what career you're going to go into, that you can drive solutions forward. And as young people, you have incredible power to do so right now. So we want to empower you with this knowledge in school to make a difference. And we're excited to do that with this Green Mountains program. All the experts that we mentioned are researchers, staff, faculty from the Columbia Climate School. We don't have adjuncts that are hired for this program. So you're also kind of creating this really nice Columbia community, this learning community together for the summer and beyond. We're always available, and we like to keep in touch with our alumni to learn about where they're headed in their climate journey, where they're headed after high school. So it's really fun to really develop this community over the past couple years that we've been running this program. Any questions that we may have? I don't see any in the chat at the moment. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I just want to thank everyone again for joining us. I hope that if anything pops up in the future, feel free to reach out to us via email. You can also call this number to chat with a Putney representative. And we hope to see you in 2025 in the summer in the Green Mountains.